This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So there's a lot going on around the world. Obviously, there was this horrific radical Islamist terrorist attack in Mogadishu, 270 dead. Al-Shabaab, is radical Islamist terrorist organization, claiming responsibility for the attack on those Somalians. Left somebody dead and injured. We've got a new president in Austria, youngest in the world. Want to talk about that and what that portends for coming elections, particularly in Europe. And then we've got some domestic controversies around national security and geopolitical issues. One is between Rexon and Trump over North Korea.
It has also made clear to me that he wants this solved diplomatically. He is not seeking to go to war.
So he doesn't think it's a waste of time?
But no, sir. He has made it clear to me to continue my diplomatic efforts, which we are. And we will, as I've told others, those diplomatic efforts will continue until the first bomb drops.
Ooh, okay.
I watched that this weekend.
That makes sense. That was Rexon with Jake Tapper and suggesting, responding to the alleged friction between the two in North Korean policy. The president taking criticism openly from retiring Tennessee Republican Senator Bob Corker. And then the other matter, the Puerto Rico and hurricane relief. President's still taking a lot of criticism from Democrats and their handmaidens in the D.C. press corps. Dick Blumenthal, with the emphasis on his first name, Democrat senator from Connecticut, calling for an investigation into
what?
Into hurricane relief. Okay, we'll have the investigation. Here.
Why don't we help them first, and then we can talk about that?
Well, we are helping them, and the first witness for this investigation, Senator Blumenthal, I called Jennifer Gonzalez Colon, who is the Puerto Rican House delegate. She gave an interview to USA Today. Here's what she had to say about the Puerto Rican relief effort. Where's Cologne? Do we have Cologne here?
Do not.
Do we have her? No. Well,
basically, what was she saying? That they're getting the help that they need? She
was very complimentary of President Trump, both in terms of his personal interaction, even though she doesn't necessarily she wouldn't necessarily choose to interact in every way that he does, right? But also his responsiveness, and that essentially Puerto Rico has gotten everything they've asked for. So I don't know how that fits into Blumenthal's demagoguery or the D.C. press corps. We'll have to see. We'll effort that clip. But for more on all of these topics, we're pleased to be joined by a man who can provide insight across the board. He is Jed Babbin, former U.S. Deputy Undersecretary of Defense, contributor to the Washington Times and the American Spectator. Jed, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Well, good morning.
So why don't we start with Puerto Rican hurricane relief, since that's been, a wedge for the D.C. press corps to allege racism and other such silliness, as well as silly members of Congress like our very own El Gallito, Luis Gutierrez. Your reaction to the reactions to what the president and House Republicans have done in response to the crisis in Puerto Rico, particularly considering what Puerto Rican elected officials are saying about it.
Well, elected officials are doing what they're doing, which is spouting off and not really doing anything to contribute to the relief. And that goes for both sides of Congress. And, the White House and the Pentagon have done a lot. FEMA has done a lot, and they're doing everything that can be done. It appears to me that there are, a lot of people who have still gone without power. It's been several weeks since the hurricane. It's going to take probably months before power is restored. But food, water, and all of those things are going out to people. They're being distributed. They were not distributed as quickly as possible, in the early stages, frankly, because the receiving end, Puerto Rico, was having things just accumulate in warehouses and was unable to distribute it. They had only 50% of their National Guard called up. Their first responders were busy with other things. So, it was a tough situation. Now there's a lot of manpower there. And quite frankly, I think all of these politicians ought to just, frankly, sit down and shut up.
But there's... I don't think so. We have family members in Puerto Rico, and now this morning some are drinking tainted water. So not all the areas of Puerto Rico have received that aid. So do you see why there's some level of criticism?
Sure. I mean, there's going to be criticism, and I'm sure there are people who have not received the aid that they need at this point. That's shameful. It should not be the case. But as I've understood it, there are, thousands of troops down there, troops sent in, their Marines are there, Coast Guard is there, Air Force is there. I mean, this is not being taken lightly. So there may be some problems there. I'm sure there still are. Again, power is out in most of the island, as I understand it. So, yeah, I mean, there's criticism that'll be due. But, for Blumenthal to stand up there and say, well, we need a big investigation, why doesn't he get off his butt and go down there and get some water out to people? That's the kind of thing he ought to be doing rather than sitting there and pontificating.
Well, in addition to that, if we want to look at those in positions of authority and the decisions they make, we can do that. We can also look at the Puerto Rican Electric Power Authority, which declined to ask for help from mainland electric utilities in the days after Hurricane Maria, instead turning to a small Montana-based contractor to carry out grid restoration practices. The American Public Power Association, the trade group for U.S. munis, confirmed the mutual assistance programs were not activated. That was a choice that was made by the head of the Puerto Rican Electric Power Authority. So you want to talk about, assessing the decision-making. We can assess it, but it's going to be across the board and may not turn out exactly the way that the D.C. press corps and other critics of the president hope.
Well, that's kind of their game. They want to criticize the president. They don't care what the basis of it is or the validity of it is. So they're going to do what they're going to do, and at this point, we just got to take it all with a grain of salt. I think, again, there's blame to go around. There's a lot of criticism on a lot of sides, and it's just blowing in the wind. People like Blumenthal, again, just ought to sit down and shut up.
Switching to one of the other topics we mentioned at the top, this horrific attack in Mogadishu, 270 dead, hundreds more injured, Al-Shabaab claiming responsibility. What does that say about this ongoing problem that is radical Islamic terror in North Africa, West Africa, into the Middle East, into Central Asia?
Well, I mean, frankly, having an attack like this in Somalia is nothing new. I mean, this has been going on since the ID'd warlords were running around there in the early 1990s, and it's not a state. I mean, Somalia is the quintessential failed state. So you're going to see this all around. And let's not forget, most of North Africa, all the countries across North Africa, well, I think almost all of them, are not only Muslim, but they're on the hands of some radical Islamists. So, you're going to see this again and again and again, and it's not going to stop. I mean, we can't go in there into each one of these countries and try to stabilize them. That's not our business, and quite frankly, it's something we're not good at. So it's going to keep going on. It's tragic. But every time you go in there and do something like we did in the early 1990s, everybody remembers Black Hawk Down.
Right.
That was on the streets of Mogadishu, capital of Somalia.
I want to ask you about this Canadian man and his U.S.-born wife, who they were freed from the Taliban, or a fraction of the Taliban, over the weekend. Haqqani. They apparently killed his baby girl, and they raped his wife. And I don't know if you saw his interview. Did you see it, Jed?
No, I didn't see that. I've read a lot about it, and the whole thing really sounds
strange.
Pretty fishy to me.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that the Haqqani would just suddenly give them up, or the Pakistanis would suddenly rescue them from the Haqqani. Look, the Haqqani network is operated by the Pakistani Inter-Service Intelligence Agency. I mean, they're one of their principal allies. So to have them being, shooting at each other and have these people suddenly rescued, it seems very questionable to me. So I'm not questioning whether the guy's baby was killed. I'm not questioning whether the wife was raped. I mean, I cannot imagine that not going on during the Haqqani's presence in their lives. But, the fact of the matter is, I don't believe the Pakistani story. I certainly don't believe the Haqqani story. So let's see how this shakes out. And I think these people, quite frankly, need to be interrogated and investigated, if for nothing else, is to find out who among the Haqqani people, the Haqqani network, they were in contact with, and label those people for future drone strikes.
In Austria, the Conservative People Party's candidate, Sebastian Kurz, 31 years old, set to be just a snot-nosed kid. I mean, and unlike Emmanuel Macron or Justin Trudeau in Canada, he, again, Conservative People's Parties, in part a reaction to essentially open borders policy of some of the establishment politicians in Austria and the rest of Western Europe. What does his election portend, do you think?
Well, I don't think it portends much, except for the fact that Angela Merkel's time in power is coming to an end. I think a lot of people are looking at her and saying, well, she's old and tired, and her policies have really failed the country. So in Austria and other places in Germany, you're going to see a lot of different people popping up. I mean, you're seeing Emmanuel Macron now in France basically taking over the leadership of the European Union. And, again, Merkel's power is not totally over. Her time in office goes on for another couple of years, but things are starting to decay around her, and her popularity is sinking, and she's going to be losing power. So that's really the only thing I can ascribe to that.
All right, we've been spanning the globe with Jed Babbin, former United States Deputy Undersecretary of Defense, contributor to the Washington Times and the American Spectator. Jed, appreciate your insights as always. Thank you.
Always a pleasure, guys.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper. Hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.